Tonight, stronger COVID quarantine measures on the cards over the threat posed by the UK's mutant strain. Also, Joe Biden's Democrats edge ahead in Senate runoffs, which could shape his presidency. Record demand for South Australia's food charities, prompting an urgent funding boost. And what's needed to save Adelaide's precious mangrove forests.
What we're seeing around St Kilda at present is an unfolding ecological catastrophe.
Good evening, Emma Rebellato with ABC News. Australia's leaders will hold a special national cabinet meeting this week to discuss the COVID-19 strain that's ravaging the United Kingdom. Pressure has been growing on the federal government to strengthen Australia's defences, with hundreds flying in from the UK each week. It comes as the Commonwealth hits the accelerator on Australia's coronavirus vaccination rollout. Dan Conifer reports from Parliament House.
This is now an all too familiar sight on the streets of locked down London. Ambulance paramedics speeding through empty streets, trying to save the lives of Britons with coronavirus, including the disease's new, more infectious strain.
A change within the new UK mutant that enables it to grab hold, like the hand is able to grab hold more tightly, and it holds on longer.
The virus has already landed on Australian shores, but there are fears those numbers will grow without additional measures.
In countries that there is an increasing incidence of disease in the UK, we're looking at what additional risk mitigation steps we can put in.
Victoria pushed for the issue of those returning from the UK to be on the agenda of today's meeting of state and territory chief health officers. West Australian leader Mark McGowan called for more.
I'd urge the Commonwealth to recall National Cabinet to discuss this and other issues.
And he got it, with the Prime Minister announcing an urgent National Cabinet meeting on Friday to strengthen the whole repatriation process. But he warns that one proposal, compulsory pre-flight testing, could cause complacency.
If they've had a test before they come and they all of a sudden think that they're not at risk because they've had a test, then their behaviours might change.
The threat of COVID-19 being brought into Australia, leaking out from hotel quarantine again and causing a community outbreak will remain until enough of the population is vaccinated. Now, that vaccination process has been brought forward by a fortnight to early March.
We've been able to bring our vaccination commencement schedule forward from the middle of the year to the second quarter to late March and now to early March.
Well, they said that wasn't possible a couple of days ago. The fact is we're way behind the rest of the world.
But as domestic political pressure grows, that gap could close further still. Dan Conifer, ABC News, Canberra.
Vote counting in the race for 2 US Senate seats is continuing tonight. The Democrats are well placed to take control of the nation's Congress, with victory projected in one of the seats and a lead in the other. With the latest, here's our analyst, Casey Briggs.
Well, they're the final two pieces in the puzzle of the US general election, and if the Democrats win both, they control not just the White House but also the Congress. And at this point, things are leaning the way of the Democrats. In the first race, Reverend Raphael Warnock is tens of thousands of votes ahead, and that's a big enough lead for US networks to have projected him the winner. In the other race, Democrat John Ossoff has a smaller lead, but most of the votes that are left to be counted come from strongly Democrat-leaning areas. So it's very hard to see how the Republicans can catch up from here. The stakes are high in these races. If the Democrats have the Congress, Joe Biden will have a far easier time implementing his agenda and getting cabinet and court appointments confirmed. And there are political consequences too, as protesters descend on the Capitol, as Donald Trump continues to dispute November's presidential election result. Has he damaged his party's chances of retaining Senate control?
Casey Briggs there. 2 Melbourne institutions have become possible COVID exposure sites after a mystery case emerged in the city. Thousands of people who were at the MCG for the Boxing Day cricket test have been urged to get tested. A day earlier, the Cricket Spectator was at the city's biggest shopping centre for the sales.
It's a Christmas season tradition that always had the potential to be a COVID-19 super-spreading event.
Oh, there's a shout of catch.
He attended the Boxing Day sales at the Chadstone Shopping Centre and day 2 of the Boxing Day test at the MCG.
The man in his 30s, who's since tested positive to COVID-19, hit the Chadstone Shopping Centre for the Boxing Day sales, stopping at 8 clothing shops and a food outlet. The next day, he headed to day 2 of the test at the MCG. He sat in Zone 5 in the Great Southern Stand from 12:30 to 3:30. His COVID bubble seating included 8,000 other fans. There were almost 24,000 spectators at the ground.
Somewhere in that Zone 5, there may be, and I stress there may be, the person where he got the acquisition from.
The government is urging anyone in Zone 5 or at the Chadstone shops to get tested.
So basically switched on the news and saw that the G was one of the exposure sites. Quite shocked to find out that it was exactly where we were sitting on the day 2 of the cricket.
Disappointing. Just, it's one of those things, I guess, but it was going to happen.
The man is the first mystery case since Victoria defeated the second wave. Contact tracers say it's possible he caught coronavirus at either the MCG or Chadstone, raising the question of how many other people may have been infected from the same source. The infection could prove to be a test case for major sporting events. The third test against India starts tomorrow in Sydney with 10,000 spectators. They'll all have to wear masks. Stephen Schubert, ABC News, Melbourne.
The COVID scare at the MCG and 4 new cases in Sydney, including another mystery case, have prompted New South Wales authorities to tighten the rules around the third test starting tomorrow at the SCG. As you just heard, masks are now mandatory at all times, except when spectators are eating or drinking. They're being encouraged to drive to the match instead of catching public transport, and the list of suburbs on the banned list has grown. Anyone who's been in several areas in Western Sydney faces a $1,000 fine if they're caught at the cricket. Food relief and rescue organisations have served up a record number of meals to South Australians facing hunger. The state government has added extra funding this year so the charities can support those suffering financial hardship from the pandemic.
When mother of 6 Anna Schultz found herself unemployed 2.5 years ago, she didn't realise how much difference food donations could make in her life.
It's actually quite devastating when you can only pay your bills. So that food meant that I could eat.
She received donations from food charity Oz Harvest and now volunteers helping families experiencing financial hardship throughout the pandemic.
Very, very grateful for them helping me, but also the fact that I can help other people too.
One of the biggest areas that we're seeing is first-time food relief seekers, people that have not been in the situation before and for various reasons due to COVID have found themselves doing it tough.
The state government has pledged an extra $1 million for food charities like Oz Harvest, Food Bank and Second Bite. Oz Harvest will receive $100,000, which will keep 2 food delivery vans on the road and help the charity cope with an increase in demand.
We do know that there are people in less secure employment, and so we're always very concerned about different cohorts of people who might need assistance.
Oz Harvest delivered more than 65 tonnes of food last month, 20 tonnes more than the same time last year. It's expected that trend will continue into 2021 as the pandemic stretches on. A helping hand for the thousands of extra people facing hunger. Evelyn Leckie, ABC News, Adelaide.
Environmentalists and the state opposition have called it an ecological disaster. Thousands of trees have died in the mangrove swamps at St Kilda in Adelaide's north. The state government says an investigation is underway and a mining company is facing possible punishment.
Just months ago, this mangrove swamp was a thriving forest in Adelaide's north. Now, over 10 hectares of the mangroves are dead. And there are fears that's just the beginning.
We are facing a disaster here. What's happening is the water is continuing to leak, and if it continues to leak, more mangroves will die.
Environmental experts say the issue has been caused by extremely salty water being pumped into the neighbouring salt plains by mining company Buckland Dry Creek. The Department of Energy and Mining says the miner reinstated a disused pump in October last year against the terms of its tenancy. When contacted, Buckland Dry Creek Director Peter Jerkovich declined to comment on the issue.
We need to get that salty brine out of those salt ponds as quickly as possible. We have a small window for action and the government needs to put greater pressure on the company to act.
The government issued a clean-up order to Buckland Dry Creek on December 24th. But almost 2 weeks later, nothing has been done. Now the opposition says time is running out.
This issue is urgent, and yet we're getting no urgency from the government. We need them to pay attention to this and to do it now.
The traditional owners of the land, the Kaurna people, are also concerned what effect the die-off will have on the local area, with many significant plants and animals set to be affected by the loss of habitat. A government spokesperson told the ABC that several regulatory actions were underway, and the company is expected to begin groundworks next week.
Unless we see urgent action from the company and from the government, we're facing a disaster for our local fisheries, a disaster for local tourism and a disaster for the local environment.
A critical time for this critical habitat. Dana Morse, ABC News, Adelaide.
Police in Hong Kong have arrested 52 political activists in the biggest raid since China imposed a sweeping national security law last year. Australia's Foreign Minister Marise Payne says she's concerned by the move and the consulate is monitoring developments closely. Here's China correspondent Bill Birtles.
A knock on the door in the early hours of the morning. These sorts of scenes are common among activists in mainland China. But this is Hong Kong. Former legislator Lam Chuk Ting was one of more than 50 arrested. The charge, subverting state power under Hong Kong's new national security law. Then they tell him to stop filming before leading him away in handcuffs. One by one across Hong Kong, local politicians, activists and even an American lawyer opened their doors to police.
John, do you have anything to say to Hong Kong people?
Continue to work for democracy and human rights in Hong Kong.
In all, 52 people were rounded up and taken away in the biggest day of arrests since Beijing announced a new national security law last year.
I think that when we fight for what we believe in, we know there are consequences. I think there are many people here refused to be intimidated into silence.
What all of those arrested have in common is that they were involved in a primary ballot last year to pick pro-democracy candidates for city elections. They hoped to win a majority that could allow them to block budgets and stifle government bills. Attempting to do this is now regarded as a serious crime. For many, it's not their first arrest. Activists in the city are increasingly self-censoring through fear, but some in Hong Kong are still publicly defiant.
The judges, the professionals, the politicians, the Hong Kong people, we all have to stand up for what we believe in.
Since China's leader Xi Jinping imposed the new law on Hong Kong last year, we've seen a media tycoon in shackles, students raided for foreign collusion, and people detained for waving pro-independence flags. But today's raids are the real shock and awe. Xi Jinping is sending a message. Any real, serious opposition in Hong Kong's so-called democracy is now no longer allowed. Bill Birtles, ABC News.
Authorities in Indonesia say they'll be closely monitoring Abu Bakr Bashir when he walks free from jail. The alleged mastermind of the Bali bombings is due to be released on Friday, when he will have completed a sentence for other terrorism offences. In Australia, survivors and victims' families are worried Bashir will continue to preach his extremist views. But as Southeast Asia correspondent Mazoe Ford reports, he may not have the power and influence he once did.
And very special on the day he got water baptised.
Sandra Thompson says she forgave Abu Bakr Bashir for the death of her son Clint a long time ago, but she does not want to see him released from jail.
Yes, he should be there till he dies. He doesn't deserve to walk and be free.
29-year-old Clint Thompson was one of the 88 Australians who died in the 2002 Bali bombings. Hundreds more were injured. Al-Qaeda-backed terrorist group Jamaat Islamiyah carried out the evil plot, and Abu Bakr Bashir was its spiritual leader.
The thing I am worried about is that he still has power. He can get out and he can train up a whole lot of other people to do this again.
Survivor Jan Lazinski, who lost 5 of his mates in the blast, is also against Bashir's release.
He should not be allowed to go into a mosque. He should not have access to a microphone or megaphone and large crowds.
The radical cleric has always denied plotting the Bali bombings. He was jailed for conspiracy in 2005, but his conviction was quashed on appeal. In 2011, he was sentenced to 15 years for his links to militant camps, a sentence that's had several reductions over the years and now expires on Friday.
He'll probably have a steady stream of visitors seeking his advice and so on. But in terms of being a threat, no, I don't think so. There are other people who are younger and more charismatic now, and people who are, in fact, more extreme than he is.
This guy, he's 82, but I tell you what, he is an evil person. He's helped coordinated this evil against Australia, and he should not be walking out unwatched.
Indonesia says all former inmates are monitored. Australia has requested this one be watched even more closely. Mazoe Ford, ABC News.
Still to come this hour, will Australians be getting the most effective COVID vaccine?
I think Australia's in a position where it's invested in the highest quality vaccine that we know of at the moment.
If we go ahead with the AstraZeneca vaccine, but we won't be able to achieve herd immunity or eliminate the virus, we'll be likely living with the virus for a very long time.
Plus, what the new, more contagious strain of COVID means for Australia. That's coming up.
Vaccine developers are confident they'll be able to tweak their shots to make sure they work against any new variants of coronavirus. Some scientists are worried that a variant that's emerged from South Africa could be resistant to current vaccines. But researchers are investigating the mutation, which is being described as the most worrying so far. As it spreads in South Africa, hospitals are struggling to cope.
It took just a few weeks for hospitals to become overwhelmed.
You see how short of breath you are.
Patients gasping for oxygen have again filled COVID wards across the country.
We thought we were at the end in October, early November, and so now this dark cloud is circling again.
Doctors have told the ABC people are dying because there is not enough equipment or staff to save them.
Already the system is overburdened. There's no way that we can cope beyond this.
That means doctors having to make terrible decisions about who to save.
We are already choosing who to give the resources to.
The pandemic has been an enormous challenge for South Africa, where millions of people live in dense townships with poor sanitation. Despite that, the first wave was brought under control, until a new, more contagious variant took hold.
It will take advantage of every opportunity to spread in the community. So we need to be more vigilant.
Now the country is back under tight restrictions, a nightly curfew, mandatory mask wearing and a ban on alcohol sales. As a result, a first, not a single patient on New Year's Eve in the trauma rescue area at Africa's largest hospital.
It has really alleviated the strain on us, and now we can focus on the pandemic.
But much more is needed to alleviate the strain on hospitals.
Most of our resources are lost to corruption in our country.
Medical supplies stolen from the poor, the sick and the dying. Mary Lloyd, ABC News.
The World Health Organization has delivered a rare criticism of China after a team of experts wasn't given permission to enter the country to investigate the origins of coronavirus. The 10 scientists, including one Australian, were due to visit Wuhan this week after months of delays.
Today, we learned that Chinese officials have not yet finalized the necessary permissions for the team's arrival in China. I'm very disappointed with this news.
It's unacceptable. Not just Australia, but the whole world needs this investigation to happen.
Australia led early calls for an inquiry into the outbreak, a move which has escalated tensions with Beijing. The pandemic has taken a big toll on the Australian economy, but there has been some upsides for motorists. Lower petrol prices. Weak demand for fuel globally has seen prices at the pump fall below $1 a litre in some areas. Average prices in Adelaide have come off their lows and are back at just over $1.38 a litre. Motorist groups say while petrol prices remain volatile, the era of cheaper fuel is set to continue for a while yet.
Cheaper petrol prices have helped the Leo family get out and about during difficult times.
We're able to go out and go for drives as a family and go on outings and day trips, so it's been great.
The pandemic has impacted global demand for oil for much of the past year. And with many countries still in lockdown, that's likely to continue for some time.
You can save significant dollars on a tank of petrol and in the middle of a pandemic when so many families are struggling.
Coronavirus has kept a lid on global oil prices, and that's been good news for Australian motorists. Here in Sydney, some service stations are selling unleaded petrol for less than $1 a litre. And motorists are lapping it up.
I'm filling up like about 3 times a week just to keep it going. But now that I see that price, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to go straight there.
It does make a lot of difference. Definitely harder.
Motorist groups say prices should be even lower, but service stations are not passing on the full savings.
So while it appears that prices are cheaper because of what's happened in the global market, the reality is right across Australia, they probably should be cheaper still.
Oil prices have been rising after a surprise cut to Saudi Arabian production, but the impact of this is being offset by the high Australian dollar.
A dollar increase in the price of oil translates to about 1 cent at the bowser, so we've still got a long way to go in terms of restoring complete confidence in the energy markets.
Meaning that petrol prices are likely to stay in the slow lane for some time yet. Sue Lannon, ABC News.
And now with all of the day's finance news, here's Elise Morgan.
A look at manufacturing activity around the world, you'd think we don't have a dangerous virus on the loose endangering economies. US factory activity accelerated to its highest level in nearly 2.5 years in December. And it's just a smidge off a decade high, despite everything. And when you put the world's 2 biggest economies' factory activity on a chart together, both are now well into expansion territory. Of course, there was a lot of ground to make up, so it remains to be seen whether these rebounds can be maintained. Despite the new COVID variant dampening short-term global economic prospects, many, including Morgan Stanley, are confident the US economy is going to continue to expand at an even faster pace than predicted pre-COVID. That's what blank cheques from the Federal Reserve gets you. The local market wasn't feeling it today. It finished down around 1%. Investors were rattled by the US Senate race, and surging virus cases in Japan didn't help sentiment in the region. And for once, it was energy sectors taking the lead locally, following the Saudis' surprise decision to cut oil production. All other sectors went backwards, led by tech. Stronger commodities have the Aussie dollar now approaching 78 US cents. And finally, car sales, the canary in the coal mine of the economy. After understandably dropping sharply in 2020, except at the end of tax time, car sales have rebounded, up 14% in December. Lots of new cars under the Christmas tree. However, the number of Rolls Royces sold dropped from 55 to 42 during the year. Dark days indeed. And that's finance.
After days of off-field drama, Australia and India tomorrow resume hostilities in the 3rd cricket test at the SCG. With the 4-match series delicately poised at 1 apiece, Australia could make more than one change to the team that lost the Boxing Day test in Melbourne.
A week on from Australia's MCG meltdown, the ramifications are still being felt on and off the field. News that a man with a mystery coronavirus case attended the 2nd test has put Cricket Australia on high alert.
We trust that the people who are in those positions are making the right decisions by us and by the community. So, we'll go with whatever we're told at this stage.
Plans for capped crowds at the SCG remain unchanged, but fans are being warned to be cautious.
Public safety is number one priority, and I guess it's up to the individual to weigh up, what's best for them, whether they go along to the cricket or they sit at home and enjoy it.
After missing the first 2 tests with a groin strain, veteran David Warner is ready to replace the dropped Joe Burns at the top of Australia's batting order.
Regardless of who we're playing against, we're a better team by a fair margin when David Warner's in it.
Warner was today joined in the nets by his potential opening partner, Will Pucovski. The 22-year-old Victorian could make his Test debut after recovering from concussion.
If he does play, will he open?
I believe so, yes.
India could also be set for a change at the top, bringing in Rohit Sharma.
See, firstly, we all are really excited to have him back in the team. I think especially his experience at the highest level, which matters a lot.
One thing that is looking up for the Sydney Test is the weather forecast. The ground staff were preparing for another week of rain. Now they're expecting a full 5 days of uninterrupted play.
We only saw our first bit of direct sunlight onto the wicket only 3 days ago. So, we're just doing the best we can with the elements that are dished up to us.
But the SCG's curator insists he's only been preparing the one pitch, scotching talk that the ground could host back-to-back tests. The players aren't worried by the speculation.
We couldn't care less. If you rang us up and said it's in Mumbai tomorrow, we'd get on a plane and we'd go and play it.
At 1-1 with 2 to play, there's certainly a lot at stake. Chloe Hart, ABC News.
Still on cricket, and the Adelaide Strikers are fourth in the Big Bash League after thrashing the bottom-placed Melbourne Renegades by 60 runs at Adelaide Oval. The home side batted first and posted 5 for 171, with Jake Weatherall top scoring with 51 from 25 balls.
Shifted down the batting order to number 6. Weatherall was the star for the Strikers. Usually his side's opener, his 96-run partnership with Ryan Gibson put Adelaide in the box seat.
He's to that short boundary, easily gets enough of it.
It probably shows that with our batting order, we're not too set on where we can bat, but at the same time, we can, with our team now and the way it's set up, we can do a great job.
Opener Phil Salt fell cheaply again, and with Alex Carey out for 24, the Strikers looked in trouble. But Weatherall's half-century from just 25 deliveries helped guide the home side to a defendable total.
And that is 50 up for Jake Weatherall, 51 off just 24 deliveries.
The Renegades made the worst possible start, losing Aaron Finch with the first delivery.
And it's gone, a golden duck, the worst of starts for the Renegades.
Adelaide's potent bowling attack on song, Peter Siddle continuing his stellar season. And there was plenty of heat in the game. Matt Renshaw and Kane Richardson sharing words after the Renegades paceman was dismissed, with Siddle finishing the job as Melbourne fell for 111.
Perfect signs for the Strikers. Peter Siddle delivers the last blow.
As batters, we can take a bit of confidence out of last night, knowing that it doesn't always have to go to plan with the bat. We just got to get enough runs on the board for our bowlers to defend.
It was the 7th straight defeat for the Renegades, who face the Strikers again at Adelaide Oval this Friday. Cameron Slessor, ABC News, Adelaide.
On to the weather details now, but first, tonight's photo of dawn at Compton near Mount Gambier, and that was sent to us by Gary Mansell. In the city, it reached 23.6 at 10 to 3 this afternoon, after a low of 14.6 just before midnight. Light showers about the Mount Lofty Ranges and southern coasts cleared this morning as a high-pressure system directed a southeasterly airstream across the state. Moomba recorded the top temperature of 33 degrees. To the charts, and cloud over the northeast of the country is causing local heavy falls and damaging wind gusts over southeastern Queensland. Further south, a broad low-pressure trough will continue to linger over northern New South Wales, bringing humid and unsettled conditions there. If you're heading interstate, there'll be showers in Sydney and Brisbane, storms in Cairns and Darwin, but it'll be fine and sunny and 38 in Perth. Closer to home, it'll be sunny across the north. Tops in the major centres will range from 24 in Ceduna to 35 in Unadata. Similar conditions further south, with southeasterly winds fresh at times about the coasts, partly cloudy and 19 in Kingscote, a sunny 31 in Renmark. A strong wind warning has been issued for tomorrow for several coastal waters, including the Adelaide metropolitan waters. And we can expect a mostly sunny day across Adelaide tomorrow, with winds easing in the morning, a top of 27 degrees after a low of 14. On the waters, southeasterly winds turning southerly, reaching 30 knots north of Grange in the late afternoon, with seas to 2 metres. The sun will rise about 6:10 and set just after 8:30. Looking ahead, we're in for fine and hot days ahead. Sunny and 32 on Friday, then clear skies will continue on the weekend, up to 37 on Monday and Tuesday. And that's the news to now. Thanks for joining us. Stay with us. Stan Grant is next with 7:30.
Hello, welcome to 7:30. We've been told since the beginning of